Is the Bible corrupt? This is a very common question asked about the Bible and debates often between Christians and Muslims. Now, before we go on to answer this question, let's understand what corruption means in this context. When people claim that the Bible is corrupted, they often mean the text has been altered, tampered with, or is no longer in its original form, ultimately distorting its divine message. This claim also suggests that the Bible is unreliable as a spiritual or historical document. So let's look at history. The Bible's preservation is very well documented. First, there is an overwhelming quantity of manuscripts, with over 5,100 fragments of the New Testament exist in the original Greek, along with thousands more in other ancient languages. For the Old Testament, over 17,000 manuscripts exist, with the oldest dating to the 3rd century BC, what we know as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now you may ask, why are the many numbers of manuscripts significant? Well, the sheer number of biblical manuscripts allows scholars to trace textual variations back to the originals with confidence. Now they may use this to support their argument that because there is a lot of manuscripts, there is going to be a lot of variance. Well, they are correct. To be more precise, there are around 400,000 variants in the New Testament manuscripts, which seems like a lot, but 70% of variants are simple spelling errors or minor mistakes, easily recognized and corrected by scholars. Most variants are not meaningful, which means they don't change the meaning of the text, for example, spelling John with one N or two in Greek. These variants are also not viable. They clearly weren't part of the original text, like errors in later manuscripts that don't match earlier ones. Only less than 1% of variants are both meaningful and viable, which affects the meaning and potentially part of the original text. Importantly, none of these meaningful and viable variants impact core Christian doctrines, such as the deity of Christ, the resurrection, or salvation. We can also appreciate that the Bible was passed down with great care because of the Old Testament and New Testament evidence. For the Old Testament, the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed that Old Testament manuscripts from 1,000 years apart are nearly identical, with no theological changes. And the New Testament, despite being hand-copied under less than ideal conditions, the integrity of the text has been preserved remarkably well. The evidence overwhelmingly supports the conclusion that the Bible has not been corrupted. Scholars can confidently reconstruct the original text due to the quantity of manuscripts, the quality of variants, which do not affect core doctrines, and the careful preservation of the Bible throughout history. Now let's look in the Quran. Did you know in the Quran, it acknowledges the Torah, known to them as Torah, and also the Gospel, known to them as Injil, as authentic and divinely inspired texts? Look at these verses in the Quran. Surah Al-Ma'idah chapter 547. So let the people of the Gospel judge by what Allah has revealed in it. So, if our Gospel was really corrupted, then Allah should have told the people not to judge by the Gospel, but that is not what He says. He says, Christians are meant to judge by the Gospels. Also, a few verses earlier in verse 43, Allah asks Muhammad why the Jews are going to him to judge a dispute when they have the Torah. Again, if the Torah was corrupt, Allah wouldn't have questioned Muhammad as to why the Jews went to him instead of the Torah to solve the dispute between them, or for the Quran to describe it as a valid source of divine judgment. This is also consistent with other verses in the Quran which reinforce the idea that the Torah was seen as authentic and uncorrupted during Muhammad's time. To counter this, they may bring up verses from the Quran to support the claim that the Bible was corrupted. For example, in Surah chapter 2 verse 79, it says, Woe to those who write the book with their own hands and then say, This is from Allah, to purchase with it a little price. But this verse condemns those who produce false documents and claim divine origin. It does not assert that the genuine scriptures have been corrupted. And also Surah 3 verse 78, even still this verse highlights verbal misrepresentation rather than textual alteration. You see, the emphasis here on both verses is on misinterpretation or misrepresentation, not on the physical corruption of the scriptures. If someone comes to you and says that the Bible is corrupt, here are some questions you ask them to counter. If the Bible is corrupted, bring the original uncorrupted copy. If they claim the Bible is corrupt, they are assuming there exists an uncorrupted copy. Ask them to present it. Along with this, ask them who corrupted the Bible and when. It'll be interesting to hear their answers. Another question you can ask is, if the Torah and Gospel were corrupted before Muhammad's time, why would Allah send Muhammad to confirm them? If the Bible was corrupted, how do you explain the Quran's agreement with many biblical themes, such as the creation story, prophets, and moral teachings? I hope this video helped you answer the question. If you have any more questions you want answered, or any queries, please send an email. Thank you for watching.